Hello everyone, welcome back to my tutorial series in UE4. In this episode, I want to add another little kind of cool thing to our project. In this case, you'll see I've done a bit to the scene. I'll explain what I did in a little bit. But what I'd like to do in this episode is to create a kind of obstacle, an obstacle that the player can activate and get through. Only if they use the shooting mechanic that comes with the first person template. So to get you guys caught up on what I've been doing, I added a few things to the scene. So I took the second block that we made to test our sprinting mechanic, I extended it, and you feel free to take some time to set this up. I extended it a bit. I built kind of a room out of a couple walls. Same thing, I basically just copy and pasted the walls from over here. And I built a little bit of a door frame. And I added a few lights, some point lights like we added before, and a new type of light called a spotlight. And as you can kind of guess from the name, it's just a big spotlight. It basically points in a direction and lights it up. This can be found on the left side. In the Modes tab, you can go down to Lights, and there's one for Spotlight. Feel free to drag that in, and you can play with the settings on the side, like the intensity, the attenuation radius if you want to make it go farther, light color, things like that. I've set it up to be just basic right now. And lastly, I made another little wall, kind of off in the distance. All it is a tiny little wall with a spotlight facing it. So what I would like to have happen is that when the user comes here, there will be a door right here that's closed. What I want to have happen is there'll be a button right here. When they shoot the button, the door begins to open, and it stays open, the player can now proceed on. So let's get looking at how to build that. First, let's work on the button itself. What I want to do is pick a location in your project. So I'm going to go into first person BP, blueprints. I'm going to right click. I'm going to create a new blueprint class, and I'll make it of the actor type. I'm going to call it BP button. Okay, I'm going to open that up. And there's a few things I want to create with our button. First off, I want to add a couple components to kind of comprise the visuals of the button. So first I need a base, something that the button itself can be built into. So I'm going to add a component. I'm going to look for mesh. And you'll find at the very bottom is one called stack mesh. Click that. Let's call it button base. And I want you guys to go into the details panel with it selected. Go to where it says static mesh and change that to something like a cube. So let's see, 1M cube. And to kind of make it look better, I'm going to kind of resize it a little bit, kind of just like a flat little bit of a box. Okay, compile. Let's add one more component. This will be the actual physical button. So we're going to look for a cylinder. And there's a basic shape cylinder right here. This comes with a couple of kind of preset attributes that we can use instead of having to go through static mesh like we did. So click that and call this button. And you may see that when you added it, it's kind of parented like this. Make sure that we have to change that and fix it so it isn't. So what we want to do is we want to take this and drag it over the default scene route and click attach. This will make it so that now it's attached to the base. So they're both at the same level. So let's go in here and move it up a little bit. Let's resize it just a little bit so it looks a bit better. That looks good. Perfect. And move maybe a little bit out. There we go. And the last thing we want to add is the collider. And the collider will serve the purpose of when we shoot the button, the button mesh itself isn't going to be what's triggering the button to change or to do anything. It's this invisible volume of space that's basically going to detect when something enters it. So we can add a component. We can look up, let's do collider, and or collide, and you'll find, let's go with sphere collision, and call this, let's say, interaction radius. This can be a child under the button. It doesn't have to be if you don't want it to be. For now, I'll just leave it. So bring this up. It's quite small, so let's make sure it's going to cover the button. So let's scale it up. To the rough size of the button. Bring it down just so... that looks good. Just maybe it can hover over the button. That's fine. It doesn't have to touch the button. Okay, that's perfect. That's all we needed to do. Just for a good measure, Maybe good to actually make it the size of the button. Okay, that works. Just like that. Perfect. So our button is set up, or at least our visuals of it. Now let's get into the code of it. So what will happen is that when the ball that's shot by the gun touches this trigger or this collider, I want it to do something. For now, we'll get it to just say something on the screen, like a print message. To kind of get the events for this, if you look at the event graph, yeah, it kind of gives us a few base events. What I want to do is I want to click this. I want to go to the very, very bottom of the details panel. And you'll see a column that's a whole bunch of different events that come with this button. It's fantastic. The button comes with, or the collider comes with a bunch of cool events we can play with. For our intents and purposes, there's only two we care about. That is the second and third ones, the begin and end overlaps. This just means when I overlap or go through it, it will trigger something to happen. So for now, let's click the begin overlap, click the plus. It'll add it to our event graph. And now let's do, from the execution pin, a print string. And let's change the print message to button hit. Perfect. And that's it. That's as simple as that. Let's go back to our game. Hit play. Oops. I totally forgot to add it. Let's quickly zoom over here. Go to our button and drag it in. Kind of orient it to be correct. It's a bit small. Maybe we can scale it up a little bit. There we go. That looks good. And now we can play. So let's see if it works. Ah, it does not work. Although, depending on how you see, you may see something interesting happening. We see that the ball isn't actually touching the surface. It's actually bouncing off the collider itself. The collider isn't allowing it to enter the collider, which would register the overlap event. It's actually bouncing off of it, which means it would never register it in the first place. We don't want this to happen. And so what we want to do is we want to take a look at the collision types and make sure that the bullet itself, treats the collider as if it was like invisible. It would never interact with it. So to do that, what we can do is let's go to our button first. Go to viewport. Click on interaction radius. And in the details panel, go find the collision tab. And at the very bottom, click on the drop down and then open up collision presets. Now this is all the types of collision there is to relating to this unit or model. And there's different types. Obviously there's all these types of world static, world dynamic, pawn. These are meant as ways of organizing different types of models. So characters can have their own collision type. Objects can have their own collision type. Enemies can have their own collision type. You can organize them, you can create new ones. For now, these are the default ones the game comes with. Most likely what's happening right now is that the ball is saying, I want to bounce off certain collision types. And the collider is set to being one of those. We need to make sure that the button is not of that type. So right now it's set to overlap all dynamic. And if you're looking here, there's three columns: ignore, overlap, and block. It is not set to block anything right now, except for projectile. Ah, what do you think our bullet is? And to kind of confirm this, let's go back to our content browser and open first person projectile. Now if you go to here, go to viewport and click on this yellow ball and go to its collision types, which would be there right here. Totally blind for a second. Drop down that. It's set to no collision. However, go to custom. We can look at it. So that's good. It's set to no collision, which means no collision is currently active. But there's a collision component. So it must be the collider. So let's click on that. And go to collision presets again. No physical collision. Yet it's set to blocking everything. And our collider is set to block projectiles. Okay. So let's do one more check. What collision type is our interaction radius? It is the collision type world dynamic. Okay. Let's make sure the bullets overlaps instead of blocks, overlaps world dynamic. Let's say world dynamic is going to represent all of our triggers. And so if it ever hits a trigger, it should go through the trigger. It shouldn't bounce off the trigger. So we changed that. So now it should overlap world dynamic objects. To test this, let's click compile. And let's look at our view again and hit play. And let's see what happens. And there we go. Our button hit message prints. If you look closely, you can actually see it bouncing off the surface of the button now. It's no longer bouncing off the collider. And we officially have something working. Excellent. That's what we wanted. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that when I hit this, I want to change, instead of moving the button, we'll just do something simpler. We'll change the color of the button. It'll go from a green button to a red button. Easy peasy. To do that, we need two materials. To make these, let's make these materials quite quickly. So let's go to the content folder and go to, we can just make them out here. Why not? Right click and click on new material. Let's call this button on mat. Open that up. And this is our material editor. Material editor is a whole nother kind of interface, so you may not be very familiar with it. But at the base level, this is our core material properties. This is the details of it, and this can change how this looks. The palette, or all of our available options for how we can contort and modify our materials. And this is kind of our viewer. So we want to make just a red color. To make a color, what we want to do, and I'm not sure if you guys are very aware, we look up vector parameter. Vector parameter, once you create it, is a 3-channel, a 4-channel if you consider the alpha or the translucency, is our red, blue, and green. So if you click this and go to the details panel on the left side, you'll have default value. If you click the black, we'll have a color picker. For now, we want to make this the on texture, so it's going to be green. Let's drag it to green, slide this up. And once you're ready, it'll say, here's the new color. Click OK. This will turn green. And to make this represent this new color, we had to hook it up into this base color pin. All you need to do is drag the white into the base color. And now our texture is now green. Easy peasy. There we go. That's all we need to do. So what we want to do next is we want to make the off button. So we can minimize this. To make it easy, we can click this and duplicate it. We can call this off. Open it up. And the same thing we did earlier, instead we're going to click this and make it red. Orange, red, however you see fit. Make it purple if you like. That's fine. Save it. We can go ahead and close these. And now going back to our BP button, what we want to do is we want to check that when something interacts with this radius, we want to make sure that it's the player, the projectile that hit it. An easy way to do this is that let's go from execution. Actually, sorry, we actually want to drag from other actor. We want to do a get class. And this is what this is going to do is going to get the original founding class that this object was spawned from. And how we spoke about classes last time. Instead of getting the instance or that local copy, we're saying, what are you? What is your constructor? We want to do is child of. And now what we can say is, are you from that class? And if we look up projectile, we can find first person projectile. And now we can create a branch. Branch being an if statement. Hook that up. And now what we have, and we can hook up this return value to the condition, is saying whenever we can overlap, I'm going to get the class of the object that's interacting with me, this pin. I'm going to ask and compare its founding class against the projectile. And I'm just checking whether or not that whatever hit me is a first person projectile object. If it is, then let's proceed with changing color. Because the reason we do this is that, let's say I as a player walk into the button. I don't want it to change. I only want it to change if the bullet hits it. It's saying only certain things can actually make the button change. Perfect. So if this is true, what we want to do is we actually want to grab a reference to the button. So feel free to drag that in. Here's a reference pin. We want to set material. And go to the material and click on. Actually, sorry, we want to set it off. Hook that up to true. And there we go. Now let's check it out quickly. Hit play, come up here again, fire, and it turns red. So we know for a fact we hit it. And we can hook up our on pin or on color quickly. So we can just click on this button model, go down to the materials tab, and then change the material out to be the on color. So, oops. So now we have a pretty little on and off button. Simple, easy peasy. But now what we want to do is we want to be able to open a door, make a door go up. What we can do, so let's actually make our door blueprint. So we want to, actually let's see. Yeah, we'll go a little bit this route. So in our blueprint folder, let's make another blueprint of the actor type, and we'll call this one BP door. So BP door, we're going to add a component of the static mesh type. Oops, not that one. Static mesh. We're going to call this, we'll just call this model. We'll be ambiguous with it. And we'll change this to a 1M cube. And we'll kind of make this door shaped. So we'll kind of do that. Maybe get a white wider. Sure. Kind of like that. That works for us for now. Perfect. So coming in here into the event graph, what we want to do is we want to actually use something called a timeline. A timeline is the progression of a value over a course of time. So between 0 and let's say 5 seconds, we can decide how this value goes up or down. In fact, it can do either. It can go up, down, left, right, all over the place before it hits that end of the time. What we want to do is you actually want to say between 0 and 1 seconds, go up this much. So to do that, what we can do is we can right click, we can do timeline. You'll find at the very bottom a thing called add timeline. Click that. We'll call this move up. Oops, move up. If you want to rename it, if you accidentally did what I did, press F2. Perfect. So to cause this to play, we actually want to be able to give anything the ability to make this play. So what we want to have is a custom event. So right click, do custom event. And a custom event doesn't have anything hooked up to it, like by default. Like it's not like an event tick that has things triggering to happen. A custom event happens when we want it to happen. And so we'll call it trigger door up. And so something else can call this to happen. So hook that up to play. And if you double click this, you'll see move up template. This is our timeline editor. This is how we're going to kind of define the timeline. So what we want to do is we want to do a float, add float track, and we're going to make it go up on one axis. We're going to make it go up, just up. So click add float track. We're going to call this up value. Free float name, whatever you like. And we're going to right click and add key. What I want to do is here we have a time and a value. I want to set this time to 0. So at the start, it's going to be a value of 0. I'm going to right click and add another key. And I'm going to set this to a value of 1 and a value, or a time of 1 and a value of 1. So a very straight progression, but you can have it kind of angled if you want to make more keys. You can play the settings, but for now we're just going to do something very basic. And in fact, let's just play it a bit more. Let's make it go 2, value of 2. Just like that. Compile, save, and go back to your event graph. Actually, one thing we need to change quickly is that how you see this light up gray area, this is how long the track is. So right now it's going to go to that value of 2 and just stay static forever until it hits 5 seconds. To change this, we have length up here. Feel free to set this to whatever we set our key to, which is 2. oops, sorry, we have a time of 1, so length of 1, and there we go. And compile, then go back to event graph. Now what we have is this new pin for up value. That value that we have, that new track, is now being kind of returned as a value. And to kind of explain a bit more, what's going to happen is that every tick that value goes up is going to cause this execution to happen again. So it's going to happen a lot, like a lot of times in the frame of 0 and 1 seconds. Each time it does, it's going to execute this code here, and this value is going to be updated each time. So what you want to do is actually just do, so let's say set actor location. We're going to grab the current actor's location, so let's say get actor location. This is our current location right now. We want to break this because it's a vector type. Yellow represents vector. And to the X, Y, and Z. We want to see what axis go up is. So let's go in here. If we look at our little axis pin in the bottom left, Z is up. So we want to have Z. We want to do plus float. And we want to say plus this. Now we want to reform the location, so we want to make vector X, Y, and then this new Z. So it's a new location, and we're going to hook that up to the set location. So now every frame, it's going to go up. Okay, cool, excellent, that's easy. So what we want to do is we want to actually be able to say that this button has the ability to tell that door to move. Now, it's challenging because what if you have 100 doors in the scene? It's going to be hard finding that particular door. What we can do though is assign that door to this button. So this button can tell that door to open. To make this happen, we actually want to go to our button blueprint, add a variable, and call it door ref for door reference. Right now it's going to spawn in as a Boolean type. We want to click this, the data type, and we actually want to change this to, if we named our door correctly, BP underscore, and actually find door object type here. We want to click that, compile, and we want to change 2 properties. We want to set instance editable, so that now that when we go into our scene, we'll be able to see this on each copy of the button that we place in the scene, and expose on spawn just for future ability to use. This will just mean that when we spawn the button, can we set this property? Compile. Now let's go to the scene. And if you click on our button, oops, our lighting seems to have broken out a little bit. Oh, there we go. Click on our button. Now that property we just set will appear here. What's excellent about that is that now what we can say is let's drag our door in. Drag it right there. Kind of get into place. It's a bit big. Or sorry, it's a bit small. What we can do is we can just kind of scale it up a little bit. It doesn't need to fit very pretty, but it just needs to kind of get, serve the purpose that we need it to for now. And we'll place it right there. It's not the greatest door, but it'll work for what we need it to work for. So click this. What we can do is we can click this little eyedropper that, as you can read, pick actor from scene, click it, and then click the door. Now this button has a reference to this particular door. If I had another door, it would go to this door, not the other one. So let's go back to our button. And we have all this hooked up right now to set the material to off. Using this door reference, we want to drag a copy or a reference in. From this, remember that custom event we had and we called it trigger? Look up trigger. Trigger door up. This is us calling the door's trigger door up event from the button blueprint. And this is a powerful way we can handle things, is now the button has the ability to trigger any door. And so now we can have a series of buttons and doors connected to each other, which is great. It makes our kind of level design process very easy to build. So wake that up, we can compile. Now let's test and see what happens. So you see our door is closed. We can sprint over to it. We can't get through it though. We click our button, changes, and it goes up. And so it goes up this much, so it's still not enough. Okay, that's not the greatest. What can we do? There's two things we can do. We can go to our door, we can go to our timeline, and we can increase the value more and more and more. But that makes it a bit hard because now we have to go into the timeline every time and change it. What would be nice is that we have a base amount of acceleration or time growth, but we modify that externally. So what we can do is in here, instead of hooking up the value directly into that add, we actually want to multiply it first. So we can do float times float. Let's just double it. Let's just say whatever it is, times it by 2. Plug that into the plus. So now we're just doubling whatever is outputted before. So now let's try playing. Jump over here, shoot that. Our door goes up, and there we go. We now have a door that goes up. We have obstacles and things up to the buttons. And what's great is that you shoot it again. It does keep going up a little bit. That's because we haven't told the door to never do that again. And to kind of quickly round this off and to say, never do this again, we want to make our button a one-time use button. And that's as easy as saying, move everything here over. I want to break this pin, so you can hold down Alt and left click. Right click and do a do once. And the sole purpose of this pin, of this node, is to only run the following code once until otherwise reset. And as a last test before we end for the day, run over here, shoot the button, door goes up, nothing happens. We can move on. There we go. We have another stage to our level design. This powerful tool of managing references publicly like we did is a great way of letting us be able to add more and more doors and more buttons and easily set them up. Thank you for joining me.